was wondering if you'd like this dress, Terry, because maybe I put some in it, but it's like a leathery. I think it has some shine. We'll see from behind. Um, I grabbed these shoes to put on, but I was running late, so we'll do it now because I think the match. Just a say. Okay. So last night, um, I I was gonna watch that movie that the amateur. Um, but I started watching it and my phone was dying and I like to have my phone when I'm on the couch anyway. Um Machi. Um so I went in the bedroom to charge it for a bit. So even when I posted the movie, I didn't finish it then. So um don't have like this exact time. I think I went to microwave some food that John sent me from Amazon. Thank you, John. Um and I Oh, when I got up, from the movie, I let Fila out, and I could hear her when I put the phone on the charger, scurrying around, and I heard her like then when I was microwaving, but then I couldn't hear her, and I was like, "Oh no, did she fall in the pool?" So I go out front, and I start calling Fila, Fila. She's not coming. She's been pretty good about that coming lately. I don't hear her running. I don't hear her bark. I don't hear anything. I get really scared, so I started walking in the back and I look in the pool where I'm afraid I'll see her, and she's not in the pool from what I can see because the pool is completely black. And it's not supposed to be like that at night, even though it was dark out. You had some light in the bedroom, and then I think there's a light back there outside, only in the back. But I'm looking and I'm thinking, is the water disturbed at all? Like, am I gonna see her down there? It was really terrifying, and I'm screaming her name. So she finally comes around running. Um, but I was so scared. So then I came inside and I was crying like pretty bad cuz just a lot of things obviously, but the fact that the pool has gotten so bad and that I haven't seen the pool guy in like a month, and I know like you guys were so proud of me when I started to sell my makeup, and I thought I'm going to do really good at this, and now I'm having to like dismantle it and kind of admit to myself that I can't do it anymore. So I was trying to cope, I guess, but then so I told myself, you know what? What if I can, like with the pool? Why don't I see about putting the bleach, the chlorine tablets in the pool? So I like get the bucket and throw in two. I'm getting kind of low on them actually, but if that might help. And then I came inside and I thought, you know something? I got a pool vacuum cleaner, and some months ago. Maybe it was like Black Friday on sale. And I didn't use it because I had a pool person, and I thought I should find that. It wasn't in the living room. Shocker top. Let's see. It wasn't in the living room, and I remembered I put it in the garage. But remember that garage light's been out. I don't know how to replace it. Like the double barrel lights, long. Anyway, I wouldn't even know where to buy them. Maybe Lowe's, and I hurt myself installing it. Why am I thinking this way? So I think I can't from the door, the garage door you can go into from the living room. I click the button to open the garage to bring it up, and then I go out and go around, and then I feel it comes out with me, and I realize um it's too dark. I look in the garage, it's too dark. You can't see inside at all. It's like completely black out there. Um, the moonlight, the ever so faint from a couple sprinkling of people's houses light, but it was just I can't see anything in here at all. I go inside to where my phone was charging, like I said, in the bedroom, and right as I take it off, I hear her just start going crazy, like, so I go to run to the front, and I see a man on my neighbor's car, like the shadow, like figure of a man going like into my garage, like going this way. And he's talking, it's sort of singing something like la the voice. Wait, and I had opened the door, and when I saw that, I was just like, "Feel we need to go back inside." So I come inside, and I think this person is in my. He got in my garage. I come in, I get the door, the garage door, like, close, and I'm looking in, but it's so black. I don't know if someone's in there, and I become so scared. I actually am like this, thinking, "Is somebody in there? What do I do?" I get in like my chair, like in the living room, and I'm just like, "Okay, w- am I safe? Like, are they gonna come in through this? Like anywhere in the perimeter of my house that they could come in?" And I'm thinking, who of you is like awake right now? And like on which coast or whatever. And I'm like, Daryl. Daryl's probably up. I called Daryl, and Daryl's like, "Oh, I was hoping you would call." I'm like, Daryl, I think there's somebody here in my garage. And I told him what happened, and he said he would hit them with his wampum stick. He said he would like dress up like the lady from his Doubtfire and like with a stick. I don't think I have a stick. Um, I had a lot of trouble falling asleep. Eventually, I watched the rest of the movie, but I couldn't really totally follow it. I've been really scared since then. I did go in the garage and did not see a man in there today when I found the pool vacuum, right, kind of in the front, but it was right near where the spider. And I'm telling you, the spider, it's. I know everyone says this about every spider, but like telling you it's a poisonous spider. Um, when I had my therapy, and I just like cried like the whole time. Um, I told her, like, I need to get a new bank, and I have to go then, and she's like, "You can do that from home even, like, you don't even have to go out because I you know how I get." And she said, Acorns Bank, have you heard of Acorns Bank? She's like, "It has The Rock." So, maybe I will do that, and I don't have to go but I'm not been doing well, like, I can feel myself getting sick, um I can feel myself getting physically sick. Um, and it's bothering me, I know, like with my sleep, bad, when I've had to eat, bad, my stress level, bad. Uh, the disappointment that I wanted to tell you, it's like I realize I can't come on every day and say like just how horrible everything is. But to me, it's like this could be it. Like, what could have happened to me last night? That could have been it. Yesterday's show could have been it. The spider, what like, and I think people see me like I'm a movie character. I'm a video game character that has multiple lives. Like, There was somebody that I reached out to, like, weeks ago that I said that wrote me back, like, basically, "Write someone that cares." Like, I I don't wanna say I'll be endlessly disappointed in this person. Like, I hope I won't think about it every day. I mean, I don't have the time to since I'm not I'm that desperate situation. But, like, the my survival will be and has been dependent on the people that actually look out for me. I can't even say, like, how close it came at a certain point to being over, because I know certain people will get really upset, especially Terry will get really upset, and be like, "You promised me." But I just wanna say it's like, when you hit points that are really low, and I survive by the people that look out for me, and the people that don't, it's like, obviously, there's a difference made to someone where it's like, I could use help, I could still use help, and every day, it's like, I'm really trying. I'm really trying my best, but I feel like every day I could still fall. Like, I'm not in the free and clear just because I'm here, like, right now. And I know, like, I'm not supposed to bring it up constantly, probably even right now, but I'm doing it right now to be like, "Claire, and you don't see me again on this page." Like, you know why. Like, something could happen to me tonight. Something could just, it should just be too much. Like, I'm not doing well. Physically, mentally, I'm not safe. I'm not, sorry, to a large extent, I've lost already nearly everything. I've lost my dog. I'm losing faith in myself. I'm losing ability, um, physically to think. A lot is determined by your health. My health is not doing well. Not doing great. Um, that said, my sister's supposed to come on Saturday. Um, I talked to one of the ladies this morning, but not since. Didn't ring my phone yet. They may call tonight, maybe during the show, but I'll wait it out. Um, so I don't even know. Is anyone gonna be here tomorrow? Is anyone gonna be here Friday? And part of this craziness, like, I think makes it hard for me too, but what part makes it easier except you guys and the people that actually support me and keep me going. Um, really, really got frightened last night, and I'm afraid of the dark tonight. I'm afraid, like, the light outside is gonna fade. Um, by the time the show's over, there should still be some light, but I'm afraid when it gets dark tonight. And what's, like, gonna happen? That sucks. Pray for me. My therapist said that God is closest to the brokenhearted. So if that's true, he's reigning with us tonight, because I'm my heart's not doing so good. Um, I told her, she said, "Well, remember, you always have someone, you always have God." And I said, like, I have to tell you, whenever you say that, like, I don't think he's gonna help me. And I told her, it's like, I have the secret that when I was like 17 and I got my driving permit, and you get 2 passes on the computer exam, and the first one I failed spectacularly. Like, if there was an award for how bad you could fail, like, how did you manage to get, like, 1 out of 100? It's even 50-50. What are the odds? I guess a monkey could guess better. And I went out and I prayed and I said, God, if you do this for me, I will never ask you for anything else the rest of my life. And I went in and I passed it. I asked me out. Probably it's the same test. So I probably just mostly thinking in hindsight did the opposite of the answers I did the first time. And I was able to be like, oh, that was okay. I mean, I lost enough of them. But at the time, it was like, miracle, my deal with God. And then later, I'm like, ooh, that was a bad deal. So I could use some help. And I told her this. I was like, she's like, she started laughing. She's like, God would think that's really cute. He's gonna help you. So maybe God will help me. I asked Daryl to pray for me because I don't think Daryl made that deal with God and he's still in with God. Maybe y'all could do me one of those if you got extra prayer things to spare. Um, at least help me through this reading. We're still on the chapter from last night. Um, I don't know what it's called yet. I think maybe might be 11. A couple more pages. The next one I was gonna make the title. It was a very long title, but I'm gonna read it to you right now. With no further ado, I'll take Wally. Pulling you up. Hold on. And you see that I can't even find how to plug in that freaking vacuum cleaner thing. Um, I know Terry said I could look up the manual. I don't know what the model number is, or where I'd find that. Maybe it's on the box. I did put the box outside, so um, I'll go pull that. I didn't put it in the trash yet anyway. I don't think I have room for tonight. Willie, you go over there. These flashlights aren't that expensive. Oh, those work better than a phone. Yeah, Jason, I'm trying to um I'm trying to decode what you're writing. Okay, I'm gonna read them off. It might help me understand better. Need a ninja sword and a taser. The ninjas, do you have a ninja sword? Or a gun? Well, what do you have one in your hands as you're pulling out a box with a cool vacuum cleaner in it? Because like, yeah, you could put it like behind your holster or something, but your hand's still gonna be like in your pockets too. I don't know if you're being serious about that, really. Unless you can't ha EAN, or unless O can't ha EAN. I'm off on that one. I have actually no clue. Pew pew pew. Again, I think I addressed that. Question mark. I don't know if that was to me when I was speaking. You're supposed to lie. Did you mean to God? Okay, and then I see what looks like a card and another card and two play signs. This is probably the most hieroglyphics. Really, I mean, we're playing Pictionary here. Um, yeah, I got nothing. You really, really need more help. Um, some feet. I mean, three-legged person, mafia time. That I understand. That we can do. I'm sorry, sweetie, I tried. Okay. Mm. Finding where I was because I wasn't interested in. All right, got it. The prisoners were loaded onto trucks bound for Havana, where the anticipated uprising had never occurred and where Santo Traficante's poison had never reached a very alive and animated Castro, whose voice, given the vicarious occasion, was a few octaves higher than usual. Oh, because he's like happy, I would assume. Oh, what did I read this part yesterday? Oh, yeah. No, I did. Okay. Um, octaves higher. In his typical exaggerated rhetoric, Castro called the invasion Cuba's Pearl Harbor and erected a sign on the battle scarred beach that read, "Welcome to the site of the first defeat of imperialism in the Western Hemisphere." That's quite a long sign. The debacle unified the tiny island nation behind Castro, who liked entertaining his people by putting on show trials followed by public executions. But in this case, he miraculously spared most of the exiles, not out of any sudden spark of compassion for his former countrymen, but due to geopolitical concerns. Mass executions could disgust the international community and embolden Kennedy to unleash the Marines. It was further revealed in 2021, not too long ago, through a federal FOIA request that Kennedy passed a message to Castro through Brazil's president, João Goulart, to spare the prisoners while dangling a pledge of strict non intervention in Cuba from then on. Although Castro did refrain from mass executions, he could not fully restrain himself and did, in fact, execute five prisoners after a sham trial. The rest were marched before television cameras for 5 days as a live audience chanted to the wall. Some of the prisoners repented or were, more accurately, forced to apologize for their crimes, while others exhibited courageous defiance, asking Castro why, if he was so popular, he had banned opposition parties and was afraid to hold free elections. Okay, good question. I think that people, I don't know, would they have had cameras filming it? I guess it would just word have gotten back. Um, that all these people, they're now gone. Because you had to know that a lot of people die, even if it's not like reported on. When not being used as political pawns, the captives were confined to a sports arena where they endured unimaginable inhumanities and humiliations. Many of the men were wounded, most were still bloody from the battle, and all were dirty, but none were permitted to shower or shave and had to beg to use the lavatory. They were constantly interrogated and only permitted a few hours sleep each night, which proved nearly impossible on hard floors. Beneath bright stadium lights, after 2 weeks of this torture, a young woman swept through the crowd of broken men, handing out yellow t shirts and yelling, "Yellow, yellow, yellow," a reference to their supposed cowardice, and especially degrading insult given their sublime courage which never faltered in the course of combat. As an indication of how heroically they had fought, they lost 114 soldiers, while it is estimated that Castro lost somewhere in the region of 2,000 men. The rest were captured after they had been treacherously abandoned. Pepe San Roman later said, I hated the United States, and I felt that I had been betrayed. Every day it became worse, and then I was getting madder and madder, and I wanted to get a rifle and come and fight against the US. I felt that if they had organized us and taken us through a whole year of that training, even if the world was going to fall to pieces, they should not have forgotten us. While President Kennedy took public responsibility for the debacle and was criticized as weak, soft on communism, and anti American, he lashed out behind the scenes saying, I've got to do something about those CIA bastards who had misled Kennedy by assuring him that the brigade could independently reclaim Cuba, that Castro would be dead upon their arrival, and that a national uprising would accompany the landings. Kennedy swore to splinter the CIA in 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. By the end of April, Kennedy appointed Bobby and a team of investigators to find out what led to the brigade's defeat. The investigation was billed as a post mortem in order to avoid the same mistake twice, but was in fact grounds for a shakeup of the CIA. Bobby targeted Allen Dulles, telling him he could take up to 12 months to resign, but no longer. He also dumped Richard Bissell and Deputy Director Charles Gabel, both of whom had pleaded with Kennedy and Rusk to provide air support. Bissell and Gabel's genuine distress over the betrayal of the brigade was lost on the president, whose competitive win at all costs attitude instilled in him since childhood was misdirected. Instead of viewing the ordeal as a challenge between him and Castro, he saw it as a test of wills between him and his CIA advisors, which was made apparent when he commented to Dave Powers, they were sure I'd give in to them and send the go ahead order. They couldn't believe that a new president like me wouldn't panic and try to save his own face. Well, they had me figured all wrong. In late 1961, Alan Dulles, uh, the longest serving director of the Central Intelligence Agency, whose old American family had protected or had produced two secretaries of state before his brother became a third, resigned under a black cloud like the disappeared Moses, who was permitted to see but prohibited from entering the promised land. Dulles had conceived and developed the sprawling CIA headquarters at Langley, Virginia, but never got to work there. The president briefly considered replacing him with his brother Bobby, but Bobby was quite happy in his mob chasing role as Attorney General, so they settled on John McCone, a shipbuilding mogul who had chaired the Atomic Energy Commission under Eisenhower. Bissell was replaced by Richard Helms, and since Director McCone allowed Helms to run clandestine operations with little, if any, oversight. The plot to assassinate Castro involving Rosselli, Giancana, and Traficante continued unabated. Oh, whatever it is, it didn't work. What am I missing? Oh, just like the good old days. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that. Like, I'm doing what I did last month, the month before that, and I don't know, like hundreds and hundreds of months straight. Like, that's not any different at all. Like, yeah, I can't think of it. Mhm. A bit more depressed and in fear for my life, albeit maybe in December 1962, after 20 months in Castro's rat and cockroach infested prisons, the yum food, the abandoned exiles were ransomed in return for tens of millions of dollars in much needed farm equipment and pharmaceuticals. Many, if not all, felt that they had the president to thank for their long captivity. The last 4 months of imprisonment were especially galling, given that Botany had deliberately held off the exchange that could have been accomplished back in September because he was concerned about how their ignominious return to the States might taint the midterm elections held in November. The president welcomed the brave men home at the Orange Bowl in Miami, despite the fact that many of his advisors, including Dave Powers, Kenny O'Donnell, Dean Rusk, and Mick George Bundy, urged him not to appear there, fearing that his presence would be misconstrued by the exile community as a wink that the U.S. was planning another invasion. But the advisors were overruled by Bobby, who told Jack to attend. Before a crowded stadium, Kennedy was presented with the brigade's battle flag before he went off script and pledged that the flag would one day fly over a liberated Havana. Just as Kennedy's pledge disguised his unfaithfulness to their cause, the stadium's loud applause hid their bitter resentment toward him. They were hopeful. The reason they showed up and applauded, but skeptical. Their desperate situation might best be likened to Dorothy searching for home in the classic novel by Frank Baum, The Wizard of Oz. No matter how dreary and gray our homes are, we people of flesh and blood would rather live there than in any other country, be it ever so beautiful. There is no place like home. Despite Florida's bright sunshine, white sandy beaches, exotic birds, and breezy palm trees, the abandoned Cuban brigade felt the same way as Dorothy. They still longed for home, and although they blamed President Kennedy for abandoning them on a beach and delaying their release from captivity, they had no one else to put their hopes in. They were, however, a number, or there were a number of Cuban militants who would turn to others for help. The Cuban Revolutionary Council, CRC, was a CIA sponsored conglomerate of smaller exile groups created with the hope of maintaining some overall control and oversight of the larger network of militant groups. After the Bay of Pigs fiasco, the CRC and some of their CIA handlers became sworn enemies of the president. In their hatred of him, the CRC formed a natural alliance with mobsters across the country who also felt betrayed by the Kennedys. They fanned out across the southern states, opening training camps for snipers, guerrilla fighters, and saboteurs, primarily in Florida, where they worked closely with Santo Traficante, and even larger camps in Louisiana, where they were funded by Carlos Marcello, a man whose nefarious abduction by Bobby Kennedy had occurred only weeks before the Bay of Pigs betrayal. Besides wanting Cuba back and hating the Kennedys, the two groups, the mob and the CRC, did not have much in common. But, as the ancient proverb goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 is called, and this is the title I thought was a bit long, James Bond, Three Stooges, and a Comedian. Okay. But I want to comment about chapter 11, and I don't know how to say this without offending some people, but I don't. What are the qualifiers? The Cuban people are wonderful. Cuba is a beautiful place, wonderful place. Lots of, um, I don't know, beach. Lots of wonderful things. Okay, but here's the thing. There's like America, and then okay, imagine going to school and you heard, oh my god, like there's this big bully in here, like you really don't want to mess with of the school. Like he really is like someone to be feared. And you ever see the movie Stuart Little? It's like a little ass mouse with glasses. That's what it's like. Wait, hold on. That's who you're all afraid of. Let me pull out my magnifying glass and see. Oh, it's that little mousy thing over there. And like, I'm sorry, but Cuba is not that big. Like, why? I don't want to say why can't we just take Cuba and be like, you imperialist bitch, but why would we be so afraid? Sorry, everything in my mind. It's like, so it's all size wise. I get it. Location. Did they say 90 miles from Florida? Okay, but like, really? Johnny Roselli, who had been killing people since he was a teenager, not something to brag about, was wondering if he was dealing with fraternity gags when, in November 1960, his CIA projector officer, Jim O'Connell, showed him a cigar and said, when Castro smokes this, it will make his beard fall off. Jason, like, I mean this in the nicest way possible. Put down the crack pipe and start making sense. Like, it's taking too much mental bandwidth to read your comments and then put them in. Like, I don't know, they still do this. Like, they're, like the trash can on like your computer screen where you're like, "Beep," and they have that sound of something being thrown in the trash. To take your comments in my mind and go, oh, wait, this is stupid. Trash. Like, so just get off the drugs, man. You're confusing everyone. How soon does he die? Asked Roselli, who came from a world where men were punished with more than hair remover. This doesn't kill him, answered O'Connell. It makes him a laughing stock. He'll be afraid to go outside. I thought we were here for a legitimate hit, Roselli replied, incredulous. You want us to play a joke? Other ideas Roselli would have considered comical were a death ray aimed at Castro from afar and a plan to contaminate Castro's broadcasting studio with mind bending hallucinogens that would distort his long speeches. Given Castro's already long and scattered diatribes, the drug may have inadvertently made his next speech clearer and incisive. Dr. Gottlieb eventually made a box of 50 poisonous Cohiba cigars meant to kill Castro when he smoked one, and a poisonous ice cream cone hoping Castro would lick himself to death. More wacky plots, including poisoning Castro's scuba diving suit, contaminating his air tanks with foot fungus, and an exploding seashell planted by a midget submarine. They hoped Castro would pick up the shell while diving, a favorite hobby of his. President Kennedy may or may not have been aware of the approximately 2 dozen ridiculous James Bond style plots to murder Castro, but we do know that he was enthralled with intrigue and a loyal fan of every James Bond novel, with signed copies sent to him directly from British author Ian Fleming. So Kennedy liked Bond. I mean, didn't everybody like Bond back then? Um, Bobby did not read as much as Jack, but he too was enamored with Bond. Undersecretary of State George Ball said Bobby was fascinated by all that covert stuff, counterinsurgency, and all the garbage that went with it. While CIA agent Samuel Halpern wondered if the weird ideas, exploding seashells, poisoned wetsuits, etc., originated with Jack and Bobby. When Halpern questioned his superior about one of these absurd plots, he was told the president wants this. Before the president took off, Ian Fleming was invited as a Sunday dinner guest at Jack Kennedy's house in Georgetown. After dinner, while coffee was being served, the conversation turned to Cuba and what to do about Castro. Fleming was asked how his character, James Bond, would handle him. What? Fleming said that Cubans only cared about sex and money. Then, oh God, I didn't say it. Then laid out a plot which sounded like his latest spy novel pitch to his publisher, Jonathan Cape. He said that leaflets should be dropped from the sky, informing Cubans that an atomic test had released radioactivity into the atmosphere, which tends to linger in thick beards and leads to impotence. As a result, said Fleming, the hot blooded, horny revolutionaries, starting with Castro, would shave their beards to spare their sex lives. Once the beards were gone, Fleming fantasized the romanticism surrounding the macho revolutionaries would fade. I'm trying to think if I've heard of any dumber ideas. Can't think of any. uh, the next day, one of Kennedy's dinner guests related Fleming's highly imaginative plot to Alan Dulles, who was also a big fan of James Bond. Dulles went silent because his agency was, at that very moment, working on a more preposterous plot to remove Castro's beard, leaving us to wonder if it would have mattered if Dulles wrote fiction and Fleming was in charge of the CIA. While the CIA was inadvertently mimicking Ian Fleming's comical advice, they had assigned the operation to eliminate Castro to their very own 007. Quite consistent with the European view of Americans, the man billed as America's James Bond was not the suave, gentlemanly Sean Connery or Roger Moore, but an uncouth, foul-mouthed, belching, portly drunk William Harvey, who was known to spin the cylinder of his revolver during meetings with top brass, trim his dirty fingernails at the conference table with a pocket knife, or lift his ass and blow a fart. Is this really what you think of Americans? The Europeans think of Americans? In an expression of contempt, he always carried a gun, sometimes two, and once said, "If you ever know as many secrets as I do, then you'll know why I carry a gun." Oh, thank you, Jerry. William King Bill Harvey was born in Danville, Indiana on 13 September 1915. He graduated from Indiana University with a law degree in 1937. He went to work for the FBI in 1940. Before the end of the decade, he left the Bureau to join the newly formed CIA. Some say that Harvey left the FBI after a big blowout with J. Edgar Hoover, while others suspect that Hoover planted Harvey inside the agency as his personal mole. As a CIA agent, Harvey was the first to sniff out Britain's Kim Philby of the infamous Cambridge Five spy ring. After exposing Philby, Harvey was tapped to head the CIA's Berlin station, where he was responsible for the 1,500-foot long Berlin spy tunnel, an underground passageway that reached into the divided city's Soviet zone. Although the tunnel, nicknamed Harvey's Hole, was quickly discovered by the KGB and collected close to nothing in the way of intelligence, Allen Dulles called the operation one of the most valuable and daring projects ever undertaken, and awarded Harvey the Distinguished Intelligence Medal, which, together with spotting Filmy, contributed to Harvey's legendary status within the agency. Harvey returned to Washington, D.C. in 1959, the same year Castro came to power in Cuba. Uh, by the end of 1961, he was placed in charge of foreign assassinations and told to kill Castro. By April 1962, he had replaced Jim O'Connell as the CIA's direct link to Johnny Roselli. The two tough guys hit it off. Harvey's wife would later say of his relationship with Roselli, "My husband always used to say that if I had to ride shotgun, that's the guy I would take with me. Much better than any of the law enforcement people." Roselli, who Harvey referred to as a man of integrity as far as I was concerned, regularly dined in Harvey's home, and the two were known to have secret martini fueled rendezvous in Miami and the Florida Keys, where they cursed Bobby Kennedy. Like Roselli, Harvey hated Bobby Kennedy's guts and with a purple passion, referring to him as the little fucker. He thought of both Kennedys as rich boys who were playing with the nation's security and considered the president's inaction during the Bay of Pigs as tantamount to treason. When not drinking and cursing the Kennedys, Roselli and Harvey worked on ways to murder Fidel Castro. Harvey, who believed that Dr. Gottlieb enjoyed his work a little too much, had little faith in prisons. He instead wanted a team of snipers to take out Castro during a public appearance, then escape amidst the ensuing pandemonium. To this end, Roselli acquired long range rifles from an underworld source, but the snipers who were sent to Cuba disappeared without a trace and were presumed dead, forcing Harvey to return to schemes that involved poisons. The poisons were again given to Santo Trafficante, whose Cuban assassins always failed, leaving Harvey to wonder if the Florida Don was truly dedicated to the plot or working both sides of the fence, which may have explained why the snipers disappeared so quickly. Harvey knew that Castro's G2 spies had infiltrated Miami's exile community and suspected Trafficante of aiding and abetting them. Ricardo Canet, a Cuban who worked them for the Florida Dawn, later confirmed Harvey's suspicion when he reported that the chief G2 agents in Miami took orders from Trafficante. Those who believed that Trafficante was intentionally foiling the CIA plots traced his alleged betrayal to his detention in Cuba during the summer of 1959. After Trafficante ducked Castro's firing squad and fled the island, he told everyone that he had escaped by bribing Fidel Castro's brother Raul with a pile of cash. Many wondered if Trafficante had bought his freedom as he claimed, or if he had offered the Castro brothers something much more valuable than a lump sum of cash. Rumor had it that Trafficante, known as the kingpin of narcotics in the Caribbean, had struck a deal with Castro to distribute Cuban narcotics throughout the United States, with his home turf in Florida as the entry point, while agreeing to assist Castro's secret agents in Miami. The U.S. Narcotics Bureau confirmed that the Cuban drug pipeline into Florida begun decades earlier by Trafficante's father, who was interrupted by Castro, who needed the illicit revenue stream to bolster his lagging economy. A Bureau memo dated July 1961 considered the possibility that Castro kept Santo Trafficante Jr. in jail to make it appear that he had a personal dislike for Trafficante, when in fact Trafficante is an agent of Castro. The massive and steady flow of illegal drugs from Cuba to Florida was evidence pointing toward Trafficante's motive to betray the CIA in favor of the Beard, with whom he would have been making millions of dollars each month. Follow the money! It seems obvious. It's a walrus. Oh, yes. So I got I got in trouble once upon a time for showing inappropriate walrus cartoons. And to cheer me up, I got this walrus from Jerry. Isn't he cute? The love between a woman and a walrus cannot be denied. Okay. Trafficante may have been rooting for Castro's survival for another personal reason. A liberated Cuba would allow the vast majority of Cuban exiles to return home, drying up the majority of Trafficante's Miami rackets, which he had to himself. Unlike Havana, the city he shared with every mob boss in America, why slice up a pie he was eating alone? Surely Trafficante could not tell any of this to CIA agents or his fellow mobsters when they recruited him into their plot to kill Castro. And it may have been why Trafficante was the only person who quietly listened and did not speak as the mob and the CIA chatted at the Fontainebleau. Although Trafficante took Dr. Gottlieb's poison pills, pledging to use them on Castro, He later told his attorney that he flushed them down the toilet. Sam Giancana's dedication to the assassination plot was just as dubious, but for different reasons. Giancana saw his involvement with the CIA as an opportunity to pickpocket the government for a few bucks and ask them for personal favors. As far as the money was concerned, CIA budgets are classified, but most historians estimate the annual budget spent on Operation Mongoose, the CIA's covert name for the plot to kill Castro, somewhere in the area of $100 million. They're skimming. They're skimming. I'm sorry, is my name Girls? Did you think that my name was Girls? That's not actually my name. I'm sorry. I know it can be confusing. Offering, here we go, Giancana plenty of opportunities to skim the same way he would in a Las Vegas casino. As for personal favors, after being appointed Chicago's acting boss, Giancana began dating singing sensation Phyllis McGuire of the McGuire sisters. His wife had passed away, and he was very nice to me, said the talented, innocent looking McGuire. And if he had done all those things they said he did, I wondered why, in God's name, he was on the street and not in jail. When the McGuire sisters began touring with comedian Dan Rowan, a jealous Giancana suspected that Phyllis and Rowan were having an affair. Giancana asked Robert Maheu to bug Rowan's room in Las Vegas to see if his hunch was true. Instead of talking some sense into Giancana, Matthew approached Sheffield Edwards and asked if the CIA would install a microphone on the wall of the suite next to Rowan's room in the Riviera Hotel, since it would penetrate the wall. Said Maheu it would not be breaking and entering and would therefore be legal. Edwards did not want to get involved in these adolescent antics, so he gave Maheu $1,000 to hire an outside party. Maheu turned to a private investigator who illegally entered the hotel room and went about attaching a bugging device to the telephone. Contrary to Maheu's instructions, believing he had all the time in the world, the private eye left his tools and electronic equipment in the room and ran off to catch a show. When a maid entered the room and saw tools and electronics, she called security. Security called the sheriff, and the sheriff arrested the private eye who called Maheu from the clean. What the hell were you doing with a wiretap instead of a bug? A confused Maheu yelled into the receiver, I don't know of anyone who makes love while talking on the telephone. The sheriff referred the matter to the FBI, and Hoover, who had internal radar for spotting juicy incidents, became personally involved. As Hoover tried to figure out why someone would want to tap a comedian's telephone, Rowan dumped McGuire, telling her he was connected to the incompetent private eye to Robert Maheu and summoned the ex-FBI agent, demanding to know what this debacle was all about. Maheu later said, Hoover wanted to debrief me about what I might have learned concerning Johnny and Sam's business ventures. But Maheu claimed that he turned Hoover down flat, which strains belief. It is more probable that Maheu cringed before the all-powerful director caught up the whole story, including the CIA's clandestine work with Roselli, Traficante, and Giancana, since Hoover suddenly knew everything and the FBI's inquiry into the Rowan bugging fiasco was dropped now that Hoover had a bigger fish on the line. The things that do and do not have gone. Well, I was thinking, I'm certain that people have done all sorts of things while on the phone. I mean, I, I would imagine it's not that. I bet it happens every day. I, Betty, sorry, was speaking in general, speaking my mind openly. What? Wait, what? Uh, oh, you mean that I like it a lot. LOL, girls. You guys are so cute. The little things you guys like, I love it. Very unique, though. All right, I'm gonna have to correct you. I said women in the walrus. It actually was like 98% gay walrus activities. There was like walrus with like full on like muscle packs or whatever you call it, and like aggressively going to town on the back door of a man. Um, I don't think that the back door of the walrus was getting any attention in these cartoons, but I believe that these were drawn by men, made by men, for men, and mostly involving male on walrus on male human activities. Um, I didn't want to get too descriptive, but since you like speaking your mind, I'd like you to have more of the facts there, especially since it's about what guys like, and this was guy stuff. Um, Manga Walrus. Yes, that's what it was. It was the I call it cartoons, but yeah. Okay, the fish on the line. Without revealing Maheu as his informant, Hoover contacted the CIA's Richard Helms and told him he was hip to the assassination plot against Castro. Hoover, who liked to amass dirt on private individuals, felt he had the entire agency by the balls. In the words of William Sullivan, Hoover was jealous of the CIA's power, and he had been bitterly disappointed when the new agency was formed to dominate the field of worldwide intelligence. Hoover was especially concerned that the CIA could morph into a domestic agency that rivaled or replaced the FBI at home. I mean, they're all in the intelligence apparatus. Uh, Helms must have known that Hoover was waving a gun around with no intention of firing a shot, since he did not call off the operation to kill Castro. He did, however, instruct Bill Harvey to cut contact with the reckless Giancana and Maheu while permitting him to carry on with the more discreet and reliable Johnny Roselli, who had expressed disgust at the charades of Giancana and Maheu and swore to Harvey that, had he known about it, he would have put a stop to it. I was just thinking, like, why are we spending so much time on this Castro assassination plot? Like, um, it doesn't seem particularly, of all the things that our government has done, been involved, like, okay, I mean, but like, but then it occurred to me, oh, because I was like, there must have been other CIA planned assassinations of foreign political figures of some note. And I thought, oh, but they're not going to claim foreign. They're going to claim the CIA is involved in a particular assassination attempt or otherwise in America for an American person of note. And in order for you to not say, well, the CIA wouldn't do that, they want to say, but remember all that Castro stuff? They would, right? And they would use the mob, right? It's a little bit of a stretch between Kennedy's and Castro. I mean, and they couldn't even do Castro, so I don't. Eh. Um, but it was too late. Hoover was connecting more dots and digging like a mole. He found out that Roselli was close friends with Judith Campbell, and Campbell was placing regular telephone calls to the White House in search of her lover, President Kennedy. Before cell phones, you just had to dial the straight line to White House in the phone book. White House telephone logs recorded at least 70 calls between Campbell and the White House, some of which were placed from Johnny Roselli's West Hollywood apartment. Hoover also had access to wiretaps in Giancana's bugged Chicago headquarters, which bore other fruit. You sure get your rocks off getting the same broad as the brothers, don't you? Roselli was overheard telling Giancana after the latter had slept with Marilyn Monroe, who was also sleeping with Jack and Bobby. Before the election, and around the same time, Jack had begun having an affair with Judith Campbell. He had started seeing Marilyn Monroe. Like Campbell, Monroe was also sleeping with mobsters who she would rendezvous with at the Calneva Lodge. How do you know she doesn't just like Italians? Wasn't she married to that DiMaggio seller? Uh, Genevieve's family, Capo, Vincent, Jimmy Blue Eyes, Allo, was once a guest at the lodge when he witnessed a drunk and drugged Monroe on all fours being straddled by Giancana, with Frank Sinatra laughing along. But I mean, how do you know it wasn't just someone in like a blonde wig? One of those like short. The old world Allo called their behavior disgusting, feigning serious concern for the survival of the Kennedy administration, which would be mired in scandal if this leaked out. Hoover sent a memo to Bobby with a copy forwarded to Kenny O'Donnell. I thought you would be interested in learning of the following information, which was developed in connection with the investigation of John Roselli, West Coast hoodlum. Hoover went on to inform Bobby about a mafia probe that uncovered an affair between Judith Campbell and the president. Hoover must have got a kick out of showing Bobby where investigations into the mafia inevitably lead. Bobby was also informed about the Castro assassination plot, which some suspect Bobby had already known about. Bobby let Hoover know that he would speak to his brother about Campbell, but he did not halt any of the Justice Department's ongoing investigations into the same mobsters who were deeply entwined with the CIA. Johnny Roselli complained, "Here I am, helping the government, helping the country, and that little son of a bitch is breaking my balls." As for Sam Giancana, whose mutual dating of Jack's girlfriends must have annoyed Bobby. I feel like we're using the term girlfriend loosely, a little loosely, but okay. The attorney, if you have one girlfriend, you have a girlfriend. If you have 100 girlfriends, you don't have a single girlfriend at all. Stop saying he has girlfriends. Oh, here we go. Uh, must have annoyed Bobby. The attorney general pushed to get Giancana at any cost, said William Hunley. That rat bastard, son of a bitch. Giancana ranted to Santa Traficante. We broke our balls for him and gave him the election, and he gets his brother to hound us to death. Distrusting that Bobby would convey the correct message or warning to his brother, Hoover managed to bypass Bobby and asked to have lunch with the president on 22 March 1962. Hoover, who must have excitedly skipped along Pennsylvania Avenue on his way to the White House, informed the president that he was sleeping with a woman who had current ties to mobsters Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli. Jack played it cool, knowing exactly what Hoover was up to. At the same time, Hoover broke the news to Jack. There were rumors that Jack and Bobby wanted to get rid of Hoover by easing him out of office, as they recently done with Allen Dulles. Hoover was well aware of the rumors and was now letting Jack know that this dirty little secret could leak out should Hoover lose his job. It was typical Hooverian blackmail. Following Bobby's visit from J. Edgar Hoover, he ordered Richard Helms to brief him about the agency's work with the mafia. On May 7th, Helms sent Sheffield Edwards and the CIA's general counsel, Lawrence Houston, to visit the attorney general and inform him about Operation Mongoose. No notes of the meeting exist, and there are some who question what is reported to have occurred. According to later testimony from the CIA, Bobby was informed that the agency had worked with mobsters in an attempt to kill Castro before the Bay of Pigs invasion, but had since ceased any further contact with them. Of all that this startling revelation entailed in terms of illegalities, immoralities, and breach of trust, Bobby was still stuck on the fact that Johnny Roselli had declined to be paid for his services. It did seem like a trivial detail, but it contradicted Bobby's worldview that Roselli represented the enemy within, while Bobby was wrapped in the American flag. Robert Maheu, who eventually had a falling out with Roselli, had no reason to lie when he said many people have speculated that Johnny was looking for an eventual deal with the government or some sort of big payoff. The truth, as corny as it may sound, is that deep down he thought it was his patriotic duty. A number of CIA agents would later testify that they had reached the same conclusion. One agent adding that, unlike Giancana and Traficante, he had never caught Roselli lying. Bobby is reported to have closed the meeting by saying, "I trust that if you ever try to do business with organized crime again, with gangsters, you will let the Attorney General know." The CIA said that they would, forgetting to mention to Bobby that Harvey and Roselli were still, at that very moment, trying to whack the beard. As Johnny Roselli continues to work with the CIA to assassinate Castro and reverse the Cuban Revolution, a crazy mobster in Brooklyn will ignite the first mafia revolution in America, and although no historian has ever made the connection, it stemmed directly from the Gallo brothers' appearance before the Rockets Committee. Oh, now we begin part two. Part two is called Rebellion. And chapter 13 is called A King's Ransom. Back home. Giuseppe Joe Profaci was born in Bilibay, a village in the province of Palermo, Sicily, in October 1897. He quit school in his early teens and began working with his father, who sold cheeses and olive oil. As a young adult, Profaci begrudgingly served in the Italian army during the First World War. After his discharge, he was caught stealing a horse and spent a year in jail. He migrated to the United States in 1921 and became known as the Olive Oil King for his Brooklyn based import company, Mamma Mia, which was one of the largest distributors of imported Italian olive oil in the United States. He also owned a food packing company named after his daughter, Carmela Mia, and owned or controlled more than 20 other successful companies while overseeing his Borgata, which was christened by Lucky Luciano in 1931 upon the creation of New York's Five Families. After the Kefauver hearings, where Profaci remained mute in the face of relentless questioning, he avoided a deportation order and dodged a federal tax lien of close to $1.5 million by slyly transferring his assets to relatives. Oh, thank you, Brian. Welcome. Oh, I never heard of a movie like called that. Profaci's residences included a modest two-story brick house in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, where he lived with his immediate family, a winter getaway in Miami Beach, Florida, and a 328-acre, 30-room hunting lodge in Hightstown, New Jersey, once owned by a cousin of President Theodore Roosevelt, known as 12 Pines. The estate had an airstrip and a private chapel so that the boss, who ordered dozens of murders, could pray for forgiveness at his own convenience. According to Profaci's niece, Rosalie, the chapel's altar was a hand-carved replica of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Profaci thought of himself as genuinely religious, and he came from a religious family. Two of his sisters were nuns, and a brother was a priest. He had a lifelong quest for Vatican knighthood, which was almost realized in 1949. Brooklyn priests, who were the recipients of Profaci's generous donations, petitioned Pope Pius XII, who had personally dealt with the likes of Mussolini and Hitler, each of whom made Profaci look like a saint. The Pope was seriously considering their petition until a Brooklyn prosecutor shot off a letter to Rome informing His Holiness of Profaci's side, which was later exhibited in an incident related to the church in 1952. Whenever he was in Brooklyn, Profaci attended daily mass at St. Bernadette's Church, which one detective called his only predictable public appearances. Another nearby church, Regina Pacis or Queens of Peace, had asked its parishioners to donate gold, silver, or jewels so the clergy could have two crowns made that were to be worn by statues of the Madonna and Child inside the church. Hundreds of parishioners contributed to the project, and the crowns were blessed by the Pope in Rome, then returned to Brooklyn, where in January 1952, two thieves made off with them. When Profaci heard about the robbery, he said to his men, "I want one ball from each of those guys brought to me." Oh no. An FBI agent said the jeweled crowns were returned to the church in just over a week, and the thieves' bodies were found dead. The Brooklyn Daily Eagle reported that one of the thieves, 33-year-old Ralph Bucky Amino, told a female friend, "I have to meet somebody, I'll see you later." Amino's bullet-pierced body was later found dumped on a weed-grown sidewalk in Brooklyn for everyone to see. Numerous accounts report that the men were strangled with rosary beads, a falsehood since rosary beads are not made strong enough to strangle anyone. By 1961, Profaci was a balding man with sharp features and a thin, delicate nose. He wore tortoiseshell eyeglasses, conservative suits with fedoras, and did not appear tough. He was, moreover, possessed of a typical Himmleresque nature, abusive, arrogant toward underlings, while meek and sycophantic toward men of power. Like the clergy and high ranking officers of the law, but also like Heinrich Himmler, Profaci was extremely dangerous, and displays of his brutality, an example of which was the fate of the jewel thieves, kept him feared and free from challenges to his throne until Bobby Kennedy called the gallows before the Rackets Committee. Larry and Joey Gallo were already well known in their Brooklyn neighborhood when Bobby summoned them to appear before national television cameras in Washington, D.C., which enlarged their fame back home, inflated their egos, and made them seem much stronger than they actually were. They returned to Brooklyn convinced that they were powerful enough to replace Profaci by way of a complicated coup that began at Cardiello's Tavern on the evening of November 4th, 1959. At around 8 p.m., Frankie Schatz Abatimarco, who was a capo in Profaci's Borgata, walked into the tavern and greeted everyone, including the bartender Tony Cordiello, who poured him a drink. Frankie Schatz drank while chit-chatting and glancing outside every now and then. He seemed to be awaiting someone's arrival. At around 8:30 p.m., Frankie Schatz spotted whoever he was waiting for and said goodnight to everyone at the bar. He buttoned his overcoat and was halfway out the door when two men outside lifted red bandanas over their faces, drew handguns, and pumped four bullets into him. The force of the bullets pushed Frankie Schatz back into the tavern, where he staggered, then crashed to the floor. As the bartender dropped behind the bar for cover and patrons ducked under tables, the hitmen entered the bar and stood over Frankie Schatz. One leaned down and reached under the injured capo's coat, removing a .38 Smith & Wesson from a shoulder holster. He stood up and fired four more bullets into him with his gun. This gun then placed the gun barrel under Frankie Schatz's chin and fired a coup de grace that that entered through his left ear. Both hitmen looked at one another and nodded as if to say, "He's done," then left as calmly as they entered. Keep the change, you filthy animal. What are you talking about? Mhm. The 60-year-old capo lay on his back, one eye open, the other filled with blood. He was hit a total of 9 times, 5 from his own gun, which was later found on the sidewalk outside the bar. Detectives arrived at the scene and questioned bartender Tony Cardiello, who claimed he had not seen anything. Other patrons described one shooter as a short, chubby man in his early 30s. The detectives had a hunch that this short, well-fed, well-fed shooter was Joseph Joe Jelly, Gioeli, one of Larry Gallo's best friends and a lead suspect in the Albert Anastasia hit. When brought into the station house and questioned by detectives, Joe Jelly said he had never even heard of Frankie Schatz. When asked about the Gallows, who he was seen with on a daily basis. He said, "Who are they?" Historians tell us that the Gallo brothers carried out the hit on Frankie Schatz along with Joe Jelly on orders from Profaci after Frankie Schatz withheld $50,000 in tribute money from his Brooklyn policy racket. Water. What's this? The talking is just a distraction trying to help us get over the wonderful view. Oh, you're trying to make like a joke to make a compliment. I see. Thank you. You don't have to concentrate on the story if you don't want to. Um, the first thing that comes to my mind is to slap you with, did your moms tell you not you didn't have to concentrate when you were learning how to learn basic communication in school or growing up? I assume you mean this as a joke, right? Why do you think I'm reading this? I don't. Do most women you've met in your life not know how to read? Because I feel really sad for you for that. What was that? This does not add up, and I will explain why. Frankie Scott's gambling operation netted over $10,000 a day, amounting to nearly $4 million a year, a generous piece of which was kicked up to Profaci, who made Frankie Schatz a capo and brought him into his inner circle, which qualified Frankie Schatz for invitations to the Don's private estate at 12 Pines, the equivalent of receiving a royal invitation to Balmoral Castle. Terry, do you know what that is? Balmoral Castle, you know? It was meant as a compliment, Betty Chill. And by the way, your voice is fine too. Okay. I was gonna say, should we take a vote on how we feel about this compliment? But I'm gonna be nice and just say thank you. Uh, look, that's I'm having a tough year over here. Okay, this times is tough. Okay. I almost got killed last night. Stop. Okay, here we go. Belmore Castle. Joey Gallo was known to complain. When you want somebody hit, meaning Profaci, we're good enough, but not good enough to come to the house, meaning 12 Pines, where the Gallows were never invited. Does it make sense that Profaci would whack a major earner over a lousy late fee that amounted to less than 1 week's worth of profits, especially when Profaci could have broken Frankie Schatz down to a soldier, stripped him of his racket, and shelved him as adequate punishment? Given these inconsistencies, I was naturally confused and reluctant to repeat that Profaci ordered him killed, so I dug deep and eventually found a clue that pointed elsewhere. In an out-of-print autobiography written by Pete the Greek Diapalis, one of Joey Gallo's closest friends since childhood, Greek said that he and the Gallos were planning to use Frankie Scott's policy bankroll to fuel an open rebellion against Profaci. When Frankie Schatz got cold feet and withdrew from the plot, the Gallows decided to kill him, steal his racket, and, according to Greek, they threw it on Profaci. There you have it. straight from a conspirator's mouth. With Pete the Greek bringing the story into focus, we can easily imagine the Gallows, who collected receipts for Frankie Shots, holding back the $50,000 from Frankie Shots before they killed him and keeping the money, as opposed to Frankie Shots withholding the money from Profaci for no apparent reason. Further evidence pointed toward this version of events was Profaci's conspicuous absence from Frankie Shots' funeral service. While at the same time, he permitted everyone else in the Borgata to attend. When a boss orders a hit, he either shows up along with everyone else to throw the scent off himself, or he does not show up and prohibits everyone else from attending, letting everyone know the victim had broken a cardinal rule. Profaci's blatant inconsistency, him skipping the service while encouraging everyone else to attend, can only mean that Profaci did not immediately know what happened to Frankie Shots, and as such stayed away for his own safety, but saw no reason to keep everyone else away. In fact, he would have sent spies to poke around and see what they could glean from the chatter. Poke around. Does anyone else say that? Or is that just like an Italian thing? I've heard someone else say this, and I'm just like, poke around? It's East Coast. I don't know. A final piece of evidence pointing toward the gallows also comes from Pete the Greek, who further said that after Frankie Shots was dead, he and the gallows ended up in a tug of war with Profaci over Frankie Shots' large gambling and policy books. As mere runners, the gallows had no rightful claim to this racket, which belonged to the Borgata, i.e., Profaci, who could do with it as he pleased, unless, of course, the gallows were trying to steal it, which they were. To this end, they convinced Frankie Shots' son, Anthony Tony Shots Abbattimarco, that Profaci whacked his father, then played themselves off as Tony's defenders, who only wanted to help him reclaim his underworld inheritance, which was being unlawfully confiscated by Profaci, so they claimed. The gallows spread rumors that Profaci was a greedy pig who not only killed Frankie Shots over a few bucks, but disinherited his loyal and loving son, Tony Shots. By the autumn of 1960, the gallows were seeking out alliances in other families. By December, Larry Gallo was seen by detectives meeting with Genovese family heavyweight Anthony Tony Bender Strollo at Luna's restaurant on Mulberry Street in Manhattan's Little Italy. Tony Bender was Vito Genovese's underboss when Genovese went to prison, but Genovese must have been a bit weary of his ambition since he put Bender on a triumvirate with Jerry Katina and Tommy Boley, both of whom allowed Bender to oversee the Gallo Rebellion. A few weeks after the first meeting in January 1961, Larry Carmine Perisco, Joseph Joe Iacovelli, and Nicholas Jiggs Forlano, all young up-and-comers in the Profaci Borgata, met again with Tony Bender at the White Turkey restaurant in Manhattan. Tony Bender's involvement with this group of young Turks signaled to Larry that they had a nod of approval from the imprisoned Vito Genovese, which paved the way for Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese to stand behind Larry. In case you are wondering why Genovese, Gambino, and Lucchese would back a coup against their fellow Don Profaci, it is necessary to understand commission politics at the time. In 1961, Joe Profaci and Joe Bonanno had ruled over their respective borgatas
for 3 decades. They both married traditional Sicilian women and arranged the marriages of their children to combine and strengthen their dynasties. Joe Bonanno's son, Salvatore Bill Bonanno, married Profaci's niece, Rosalie Profaci, who said our fathers were not only friends, but allies in their world. On the other side of the commission table sat Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese, who arranged a dynastic marriage of their own. Gambino's son Tommy married Lucchese's daughter Frances. Salvatore Bill Bonanno married Rosalie Profaci in 56. Tommy Gambino did not marry Frances Lucchese until 62. Although we are currently in the year 1961, the latter marriage was already ordained by the parents and is therefore relevant to the politics at hand. These marital arrangements spoke to the larger political alliances at play when Larry Gallo sounded out Tony Bender, who tapped Gambino and Lucchese by appealing to their natural inclination to break the Profaci-Bonanno bond by removing Profaci from power. With a nod from 3 titans on Mount Olympus, Larry Gallo was ready to make a sanctioned move on Profaci. In February, he dispatched 5 separate teams to kidnap Joe Profaci, his brother Frank, his underboss and brother-in-law Joe Magliocco, and capos John Schimone and Joe Colombo. Some sources have Sally the Sheik Musacchia in place of Colombo. It was Joe Colombo. 4 out of 5 men were taken from their homes and social clubs, but the slippery olive oil king eluded his abductors as the other kidnappings unfolded. Profaci must have been spooked and hightailed it to Miami, where he checked into a hospital. He was rumored to be suffering from the early stages of cancer, but the hospital visit was seen as a ruse to duck a round of questioning from law enforcement who were sniffing around, confused by the string of abductions. The kidnappings were a rather odd departure from the traditional mob hit, and some detectives were convinced that had the gallows seized Profaci, they would have executed all 5 men, removing any obstacles to the throne in one fell swoop. An alternative theory later came from informants who told police that while the gallows were in the process of planning a coup, they became aware that they were marked for death by Profaci, who took the hostages as collateral so they could negotiate for their own lives. The message was if one gallow is ever touched, the hostages will be killed. Whichever motive was behind the kidnappings, it quickly became apparent that Larry Gallo did not know how to play the rotten hand he had dealt himself, so he decided to use the hostages as bargaining chips in an attempt to negotiate a fair share of Profaci's pie. When Profaci received an invitation to negotiate, he sent word back to Larry that there was nothing to discuss until the hostages were released unharmed. As Profaci mustered his forces of some 200 soldiers who were still loyal to him and swung open his bloated war chest, Larry, with only 30 men behind him, asked Tony Bender if he could appear before the commission to argue his case. When Bender, Gambino, and Lucchese agreed to give Larry a hearing instead of automatically condemning his actions, Profaci knew that all 3 were behind the rebellion and decided that it was unsafe to attend, sending word through Joe Bonanno that he had no obligation to sit around a table with a man who was not his equal. At the commission hearing, Larry denied that he had any intention to kill Profaci and argued that the kidnappings were a reaction to Profaci's insatiable greed, which was well known in the underworld. Besides complaining that Profaci disinherited Tony Schatz after Frankie Schatz was killed, Larry pointed out Profaci's $25 a month tax on all family members, which supposedly went to a slush fund reserved for the attorney fees of anyone in the Borgata who was arrested. This monthly payment plan was seen by the Gallos as a soft shakedown of the lower ranks who had to steal for their daily bread. After Larry laid his case on the table, the bosses were poker faced until Tony Bender pierced the silence and came out in favor of Larry without even hearing Profaci's side of the story. Bonanno, as expected, stood firmly behind Profaci, while Gambino and Lucchese, who were behind the coup when it was expected to succeed, now straddled the fence, concerned that an approval of Larry's actions could encourage revolts in their own borgatas. With Tony Bender behind Larry, Bonanno behind Profaci, and Gambino and Lucchese on the sidelines, Larry could not dethrone the old Dom by decree. Settle it yourselves, Larry was told, as was Profaci via Bonanno. That Larry was able to appear before the commission and return alive with a stalemate was a major achievement in itself. It raised the morale of his rebel gang and brought new men to his camp. But Larry still had to figure out what to do with those darn hostages who were unsure of their fate. Their dispositions under pressure varied. Joe Magliocco was always whimpering and whining. Frank Profaci and John Scimone were visibly nervous but able to contain themselves, while Joe Colombo alone displayed rare courage, similar to that of Julius Caesar when the latter was kidnapped by pirates. Colombo was the coolest of the lot, said Pete the Greek, saying he feared dying like any other man. He asked that he be done quick and without torture, as that would be silly since he was nothing but a bookmaker with lousy action at that. 31-year-old crazy Joe Gallo, who let his older brother take the lead, was frustrated by the stalemate and told Larry to murder the hostages and dump their bodies on the street for everyone to see. Larry, however, knew he could not kill them now for the same reason Fidel Castro was unable to kill the interned members of the Cuban brigade. It would turn people's opinions against him. On the other hand, if Larry freed them, he would look weak and appear to be caving into Profaci's demand. While Larry wondered what to do with the hostages, Profaci sent a carefully chosen delegation to the Gallo camp, which included part-time consigliere Calogero Charlie the Sige Lo Sicuro, a man in his 50s with a long, violent criminal history. He was respected by the Young Turks, who viewed him as an old warrior. Lo Cicero was accompanied by Don Lorenzo, a highly successful businessman in his 70s who was known for his sound advice. Though both men had everything to gain from Profaci remaining in power, they were considered fair-minded and therefore welcome inside the Gallo camp on President Street in Brooklyn, a strongly defended insular world we will take a peek at before the delegation arrives. Oh, it's getting dark. That is the end of chapter 13. We will pick it up, I think, tomorrow. Chapter 14, Sleeping with the Fish. Ugh. Nice to see, like, to any of my walrus. I think tomorrow because I have not confirmed that they're coming tomorrow. I haven't said, oh, it'll be tomorrow. It makes me think they won't be. I'm kind of hoping not because I'm thinking it'd be better if at least just my sister was here first. Um, so maybe I'll see you tonight or early tomorrow and I'll let you know. But I think I'll be on tomorrow. That is what I hope. What did I want to say? I don't know if I have confused any of you earlier. I mean, I'm sure I have, but I want to say
if I don't seem depressed at any given moment, I'm still very depressed. Um, the time I was talking about that I was really at my lowest, that was weeks ago or past that, in terms of just, I can't imagine feeling any lower, but also there were reasons and why I would be really at a point of feeling pretty hopeless. Not that I'm so great now, but what I mean is to make it clear, like, you can't just, I can't say every day, like, oh, by the way, hi, I'm really depressed. Um, because I know I promised Terry I wouldn't do anything stupid after I broke my hand that time. And I was just saying, like, to the people that hadn't supported me, like, yeah, if not for the ones that did, it could be really, really bad. What could have happened. So I'm still fighting on. It's just I'm not doing so great, but I'm still trying. Okay. um, and it looks pretty dark right now. I won't be going outside tonight. Well, yes, I will actually. I should do it quickly because I got to bring the trash up. Anyway, so I will say I love you, and um, I want to say I'll see you tomorrow. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Okay. Good night.